Good morning, good evening, good day to all of you. Again, this is Love Sophia. You're listening to the musings of a wholehearted woman. And today, we'll be having a conversation with a graduate student. Am I correct? Or graduate, yeah, a person who is practicing in psychology. And a very good friend of mine to talk about a very important topic about mental health. So before we go into that, let me ask first every one of us and to give a disclaimer that whatever that we will be talking today is just a supplementary to counseling and also to psychotherapy. All right, so I thank you everyone, to those who are very avid listeners, who are our supporters, who really do listen to our podcast and to be part of the healing process of thyself and of others. So before we start with the main conversation, let me ask you a question first. Each and every one of you, have you felt, even myself and also my friend AM, have you ever felt that you were not good enough and things seem to not don't seem to change even with our effort, even with our intention to change? Not only in ourselves, but also in the relationships that we have, and also even in our career. So, to actually hear from people who are asking me certain questions, that do I remain being not being good enough studies, or is this everything that can give in relationship, or the other person, the partner? So those are some questions that we'll be talking about in our podcast for today. And we'll be talking about the growth mindset. So, hi AM, good morning. And I think it's good evening in your place now in California.
Hi, Grace. Yes, you're right. It's definitely like nighttime here, so yeah.
And thank you for being in my podcast. It's an honor to have someone like you. Not only because you're a professional, but also you are my friend. It's also I think a challenge, right? To step up and to be part of the conversation about mental health, because we were actually talking about this, that I was courageous enough to create a podcast and to make it publicized to the world. And I think it's quite normal to have fears. I have fears as well when I started this, because I didn't really believe that I am the most capable person in the world to create such a podcast. But sometimes we are pushed to combat those fears because we need to help other people, and that's a greater cause rather than our fear, right? And that's courageous also for you to be with me today and for giving me this time to have a conversation with you. So thank you very much.
Of course, no problem. I think like what we talked about before, like in our private conversation, that I really admire like courage in doing this, and so I think I think this is kind of like a good opportunity for me, a good experience for me, at least, like to face my fears when it comes to like these kinds of things. And of course, since like it's a topic that's very close to my heart, it's a topic that like I am an advocate for, that I practice with my with my client, and then with my personal life as well. So I feel like, okay, this is something that I can do and probably I can share. So thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay, so thank you as well. And with that, we can relate it actually to our topic for today, which is about the growth mindset. Because we have been talking about, fear, about those feelings of being uncomfortable, right? To change, because the growth mindset, actually, I have come across with this topic in a TED talk. I believe that was by Carol Dweck in her TED talk, and she talked about the experiments that she did with children regarding their math tests, how to boost it, and she actually taught them to have this growth mindset rather than the fixed mindset. And I believe that everyone gets to have, every one of us have this, both of this mindset, and we are not that aware of it, right? And some people become so focused on the fixed mindset that they do not really adapt to the different situations that they are in. May it be in their career, may it be in their studies, or even in their relationships, and even their growth, their self growth, right? So yeah, may I ask, how about you, AM? How did you come across this topic about the growth mindset?
The same, well, not the same way, but I think I was trying to prepare for my final oral defense for my dissertation. I was looking up in YouTube, like dissertation defense whatsoever, and then I came up with this video about like her whole dissertation is about growth mindset among like college age,
Oh,
like under the athletics department. So like people like college students who are like varsities or part of like the sports department of their universities. So primarily that was her was her topic. And since I was trying to get an idea of like how do I like present my defense in a very convincing and passable manner, so I listened to her whole dissertation, her results of her study. So, and I got very curious as to like, oh, like there's this mindset that she was talking about. And then I came across with I worked with someone who is very interested in sports psychology, who also like talked a lot about like the difference between like fixed mindset and then growth mindset. So that's kind of like my first encounter, or like the first time that I came across with this concept. And then I just learned through these like co-worker of mine who is like a representative from our department and kind of like a liaison to the athletics department in the counseling center that I work in. So,
yeah. May I know what are the things that you have really learned more about the concept, such as probably some kind of definition? Maybe you have read something about it over the weekend.
I was trying to kind of like come up with a dictionary type of definition for like growth mindset, but I don't think I'm like very successful in terms of that. But the way in terms of how I understood growth mindset is that it's a type of mindset that is primarily focused on the process or the journey towards a goal rather than the outcome. When we talked about fixed mindset, most of the time it's like very anchored and focused on the outcome, whether you succeed or you fail, right? But when we talk about the growth mindset part, the in between part of like starting and then the outcome, that's the focus of growth mindset, like the process that you went through, the effort that you put into, um, the lessons that you learn, the skills that you like develop, the skills that you use, the skills that you modified and whatnot, the people who help you, like what other things that help you along the way. So kind of like that's how I conceptualize like growth mindset compared to like fixed mindset. And like I said, I know that there is probably somewhere like an actual like concrete definition of like growth mindset. But it's like I don't want to read it off like that. I like want to share like how I understand it.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's the main goal of this podcast, because we wanted to actually share this to people who are not in the same field or discipline that we are in. So yeah, and I believe you have captured the gist of the definition. And I think it's very straightforward, right? What the growth mindset is all about. So as compared to the fixed mindset that we think, for example, because we think that we are good, like we are intelligent, like things will just be easy for us. Like we get to have this kind of outcome. I'm intelligent, so I get to be excellent in whatever I do. If you do music, or if you do, you are good in math, or you're good in your studies, or you're probably also in relationships. We think that we are really good with dealing with people, so it will be easy for us to be to be successful in everything. However, we are doomed to failure actually if we think about that all the time, because sometimes we will have really ups and downs, and rather on focusing on the outcome, we have to focus on the process. What are the skills that we need to learn? What are the necessary resources that we should have so that we can go to that outcome? Because I believe that every one of us will, at one point in our lives, we will really experience failure. And actually, I believe that the growth mindset will really surface, or the growth or the fixed mindset will really surface if we encounter difficulties, when we encounter failures, especially failures. And I really advocate that we will have this kind of conversations, because what we see in the social media is that everything is good. They're already done with their studies. Yeah, yeah. Everyone is so happy. Everyone are so accomplished, but they don't know what happened in between. What are the sacrifices that they did? What are the difficulties that they have been through? So that's why this is very important that we talk about the growth mindset. Okay. So do you have still other ideas that you want to share to us? See?
Yes, I mean, you mentioned failure. Failure is like one of the components that Dr. Dweck, like Carol Dweck, the scholar that you saw like on TED Talk, aside from her like research on children, she really focused on motivation as well as failure as well. So like one of her conceptualization of like failure in terms of like the fixed mindset and the growth mindset is that she kind of like frames it in a way that for people who have fixed mindset, for them it's like the end of the world when failure comes. But for people who have like growth mindset, it is a very difficult experience. You know, failing at something or not succeeding at anything that you like put your effort into and heart into, of course it's gonna suck and it's gonna like hurt so much if you fail. But the thing is, like, people who have like a growth mindset see failure not as an ending, but kind of like an opportunity to learn from it, an opportunity to kind of like a starting point to begin again. And I think, like, that's just something that I want to add. And people who have like fixed mindset tend to think that since I failed at something, I'm a failure. But people who have like growth mindset, they're able to kind of like reframe their situation or the outcome in a way that they can say or like rationalize that, okay, I failed at something, but my failure doesn't like define me or define me as a person.
Exactly. Very well said. And thank you for that, no. And that's really important to emphasize that we are not our failures. We are not, it doesn't define who we are. It's just a little part of what happened to us. If we will lay down everything that happened to our life from conception, from birth, right, until we are right now, we have a lot of things that came into our life, and we have to acknowledge that it's not always ups. There are always downs also, and it gives us a bigger picture that maybe someone in our listeners right now is undergoing something. Maybe you have been very good in your career, in your field, or probably being in the role that you are in, may it be in the family, may it be as a person, even in a spiritual sense, okay? Because also inject in the podcast that I am in some the spiritual experiences that you undergo. It is also included there that probably you've been righteous for a very long while, and then you get this kind of sin. So that also have that kind of connection that we are not whatever that made us fall. It doesn't define us. We can always get up, and we can always start again. It can be an opportunity for us to be a better person and a better individual for others, and even for our own self, our growth.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we already gave a layman's definition of the growth mindset, and also the importance and why we need to learn about this. So I believe that we need also to give them some steps that they can concretely do, so that uh, they can also practice this, because everything that I actually share in the podcast are practices. When we say practices, it's not a state. When we say state, it's like happiness or something. It's like there's an end goal. But when you say practice, we really have to do it. It's doing. It's doing like every day. It's not even just every day, but in every moment. And when actually certain difficult circumstances happen in our life, this is the right time that we will practice the different things that we talk about in the podcast in Love, Sophia. So, do you have some tips for our listeners and viewers on how they can cultivate their growth mindset?
I think, like one thing that, just to like piggyback on our conversation about failure earlier, is just, like not be afraid of failure. I know it is scary. I know that, it's paralyzing to think that, oh my gosh, if I do X, Y, and Z, if I take this route or if I make this decision, there's a huge possibility that I'm going to fail, that I'm going to get hurt. So, like, maybe like through school, or like if I engage in this relationship, I'll probably going to get cheated on or like hurt or whatnot, right? So I think there's a very big part and a very human part of us who's very afraid of failure, right? So I think embracing and looking at failure in a different way, like an opportunity, or like staying curious as to like where is this decision gonna take me? Where is this like path is gonna take me? Like what kind of things I could learn from myself if I engage in this relationship, or if I like took this perspective or whatnot. So I think most people will confuse it in terms of like being flexible. I think there's a very thin line between like being flexible and having like a growth mindset. But I think just being curious and not being afraid of failure. And if, for example, you do end up at that particular stage of failing at something, or not succeeding at something that you really poured your like heart and soul into, I think it's okay to kind of like recognize the feelings that comes along with it, the pain that comes along with it, like the loss of opportunities, the loss of like your efforts. I think there's a grieving part of that as well that we need to like recognize and give ourselves some time to like process that, and that's okay. It doesn't make you like a weak person. It doesn't make you any less of a person, or like a girlfriend or boyfriend, or whatever role like you're taking, like a daughter or son or whatever it is. It doesn't make you less of anything if you grieve that part that hurts after failing. I think after that, after you already grieve that part, I think it's good to kind of like take a step back for a little bit, and then ask yourself like, what happened? Like, what did I learn from my experience right now? If it's, for example, if you have like a report or like a performance in school, and like you just bombed it, you just failed it. So I think it's good to, like I said, recognize the pain that comes along with it. But I think it's also like good to pause and then ask yourself, what did I learn from my performance today? What did I learn from this report today? And then asking yourself, like, what are the steps that like felt good for me? What are the steps that made me feel that, okay, these are some parts that I succeeded? Because I bet you like 100%, like every time in our performance, there's always be like a percent where we really did good and some parts that not really, right? So I think recognizing the things that worked, recognizing the talents that you put into your efforts, I think is one way of cultivating your cultivating the growth mindset part. And so aside from like asking, like what worked, also asking what strategies that you use. Like, what are the things that you employed or the efforts that you put into? Did like preparing a script helpful? Was it helpful? Is practicing helpful? Like, was getting feedback from a family friend, or like from family or friend, or like from anyone helpful? So like recognizing the things that you put into, and not, like I said, like not focusing on the outcome, but focusing on your process. And then asking yourself, like, how can I use what I learned from this experience, from all the answers to the questions that I've asked earlier? Like, how can I do this? How can I use this the next time I have like a class report or whatnot? I remember when, just to give like a concrete example, so maybe I'm rambling, but I remember I was working with a varsity client, and it was she had like a very important game that she prepared for like 2 months, and 2 months, like she neglected her like academics for those 2 months to just prepare for this particular game, and then she lost. And so that was kind of like, that was a hard blow on her like self-esteem, and she was rethinking her whole life of like, okay, like, why did I do this? Like, I'm such a failure. I'm never gonna get back from this. I failed not just in sports, but also like in my academics and whatnot. Even like my relationships suffered. Like my partner is like no longer talking to me. That like my partner mentioned that I neglected her, and then she was very in distress with that. So I kind of like worked with her in terms of like figuring out what are the lessons that she learned from this experience. She was so fixated on the outcome. But like as I worked with her, and as I talked to her in terms of like dissecting what really happened, like the lessons and whatnot, the skills that she used. She was able to like recognize and challenge the negative thoughts that she was having, especially like her automatic thought of saying that I'm a failure, like I suck at this. I'm not good enough whatsoever. So like she was able to kind of like carefully shy away from the fixed mindset into like a growth mindset. And when I saw, like when I was still like working with her, every time that she would have like an episode, or not episode, like a moment of like failure, she would always go back to our conversation, and then she would ask those questions that I asked her, like, what are the lessons that you learned from this? Like, what did you do to prepare for the game? What can you do differently next time? Like, how can you use the things that you've encountered, the difficulties, the barriers to like winning? How can you use that next time in your next game? Because there will always be a next game. There will always be a next time of you like taking an exam, or like a next time, or a new opportunity of repairing a relationship with your partner, right? I feel like there's an opportunity still. Like, I know that that's gonna be like very optimistic, but that's kind of like how I tend to like work with my client from that perspective. One thing too that is very, very helpful that I use myself is, like saying the magic word, not yet.
Yes.
Because I think like being a graduate student or being a trainee for a very, very long time. I made myself very old, very long time. But I felt like it's so hard. I felt like if you're a trainee and you're constantly evaluated, it's very, it takes a toll on your like self-confidence. It takes a toll on, like how you see yourself, right? So, and then you have peers, because you're in the academe, you're in a professional career. You would have peers, and you would have moments where you're going to compare yourself with other people. Like, why am I not doing good compared to my peers? Like, I am a failure. Like, because I'm not at the stage where they are. Like, I'm not, I don't have like family yet. I don't have my house yet. I don't have like my dream job yet, or whatnot. And then someone told me that it's very important to like not finish our sentences, like not put period. Like linguistics is very important in terms of like how we talk to ourselves. Like language is very important to how like we talk to ourselves. So that person told me that, yeah, you definitely are, like not where you are. You're not in the same space as like your peers. Not yet, right? Like you're not yet there, but that doesn't mean that you can't get there, right? So like maybe for your listeners, maybe some of them are still struggling in terms of like trying to like finish their courses, or find a stable job, or do what it is that they want to do, and they tend to like compare themselves with their peers. So like and there are going to be moments that you're able to like challenge those negative thoughts, and there are going to be moments that it's very like hard to do so. So like if there's one thing that I can tell them, those hard moments, what helped me, and maybe may or may not be helpful to them, but what helped me is that telling myself that not yet, like Aya, you're not yet there, and it's okay, like showing that kindness and compassion to myself, that it's okay to be not yet there. It's okay that I'm still like in that journey, that maybe their journey is different from mine. They have a whole set of like different experiences, and I have my own set of like experiences as well, and then like other obstacles and whatnot. So it's okay that I'm not yet there, but I can get there. So like the power of not yet, I think is one thing that really helped me. And sometimes I tend to kind of like tell my clients that too, like if they're receptive. So yeah, I think I rambled on, but like those three things. So like, not just to summarize, like not being afraid of failure. You know, like failure is your friend, and asking the questions, taking a moment, honoring the pain, the loss, the grief that comes along with the failure or like not succeeding, and then also kind of like telling yourself that not yet, and not yet is okay.
Yes. Thank you very much for that, AM. It's very concise, and that is really true. And as I was listening to you while you were sharing your story, since we are both, in the graduate program, you're a trainee, I'm doing my thesis. I also came to that point that I had to really reframe my mindset because I was comparing myself with others. Especially, I am in social media looking at the people getting married, they're done with their studies, what else? They're in a better place
They're
as
having
compared as
peace,
I am.
which is
Yes!
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. But I have to always remind myself that it's not yet. Not yet. And keep going one step at a time. We will go there. And yeah, I do agree with all of the things that you've said. Seeing failure as a friend is an opportunity actually. And it's when we say opportunity, you get to know yourself better, and also to get to know who you are, and also get to know how you cope with certain things in life. It's a very important happening actually, and we have to embrace that we will have failure one point in our lives, and really asking ourselves those questions about, okay, what did I do good, what did I do not that good, so that we can really be rational about it as well on the things that we did good, because sometimes we get so clouded that everything is a failure. We have to acknowledge as well that we did something good, and there are some things that we can improve upon. So I always encourage people to look into the things that they will improve upon, even to my students. Yeah, I always ask them about that. What do we need to improve on? And even because before I had this not really good relationship with feedback, but I don't want feedback before, and I believe that's pretty normal, right? We acknowledge our emotions, just like what AM said. So it actually had an impact on me, especially when I was starting to write my thesis, and having those red lines on the paper, it really had an impact on my identity. But as what Carol Dweck said in her book, Mindset, and also I believe I just came about this when my professor told me that, the main role that we have as advisor is to correct your work so that it will be better, so that it will come out that it is polished. So let us do our job. So allow us to do that. And it's not something that is against you, that you did not did well, or you did do your best. You did your best, but you just have to improve more. So it's not yet, but you are going there, and they are always there to help me, to guide me until the time that it's already okay. That's already good for presentation, for defense, or even for. So yeah, basically those tips that you said are very, very important so that we'll cultivate our growth mindset. So basically we just discussed what growth mindset is, and I think I would like to add also, because you already said about having relationships and career and self growth and even in academics. Um, on the aspect of spirituality, what I actually appreciate is that, as I've said, we have this. If we fall down, if we commit a sin, whatever it is, the fact that we have a Father who will always forgive us as long as we repent, as long as we also think about what we did wrong and what we need to improve upon. We are forgiven and we can restart anew. So in the same way also, if you, one of our listeners here, did something so horrible and you think you are the most horrible person in the world, just think about all the Bible characters, just like David, King David, who had this, um, who had an affair. Who else? Mary Magdalene, who was a prostitute. But when they came to Jesus, they were forgiven. They were forgiven, and everything is safe. You can start again. And I believe that's the power of, that's a really good example and a good depiction of what growth mindset is. That we have a God who has growth mindset, that He believes that we can be better people as long as we also help ourselves. So I encourage everyone also to have this kind of mindset and to go to confession and to start again and little by little journey with the Lord for whatever that came into your life, because those are turning points, right? We were talking failure earlier, difficulty. Those are turning points, right? We see it as an opportunity. Those are turning points for us to really be better people. So yeah, we talked about what growth mindset is. Why do we need to have this kind of mindset? And the tips that our mental health care professional gave us today. And yeah, thank you so much for being in our podcast today, AM.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very much happy that we have this conversation. Yeah, and I also thank all listeners and viewers for being with us for how many minutes, and for I also acknowledge that you are this to be better people and to be better helper, not only for yourself but also for others. And I want to remind you that you are valued and you are worthy. And I hope that you will not only be life giving to yourself, but also for others. So this has been Love Sophia. Thank you and take care. And it's raining when? Nagano na siya, nagbunok na siya, girl.
Oh, I was background noise.